If you've ever played New World and you're somewhat interested in learning more about Ashes of Creation, then this video is for you. In today's video, I'm going to be doing a side-by-side comparison on different systems within each of these games and comparing both of them. One thing I do want to call out though is that New World Aeternum has been around for about 3 years or so technically, while Ashes of Creation is currently in its Alpha 2 Wave 2. So there's a very high chance that these visuals you're going to be seeing today in this video will change by the time it actually is launched, which realistically is at least 2 years away from today. So let's jump right into it. For the remainder of this video, we're going to be doing a side-by-side comparison with New World Aeternum on the left side of my screen with Ashes of Creation in its Alpha 2 stage, which is on the right side of the screen. Let's go ahead and start with the elephant in the room, which of course is just overall graphics and visuals. One thing that New World Aeternum is truly known for is just the fact that it's honestly a beautiful game. On the left side of the screen, you can see I'm just climbing up a random mountain, and take a look at those trees. They're moving in the wind, the grass is green, we can see some teleport shrines over there, and we can actually see legitimate points of interest from quite a far distance. And it's just overall very interactable with your character. You'll see in just a few seconds, I'll actually throw my spear and you can see just the distance and overall visibility of that spear with the environment. Overall, just beautiful. And again, I think we can all agree New World in regards to graphics and visuals is just stunning. On the right side, we have Ashes of Creation, which might not be as visually pleasing. However, that isn't a huge deal for some of us. So the creative director of the game even called out in a recent video that graphics do not make a game great, systems make a game great. So with that being said, the overall systems, which we're going to be covering later on in the video, are very complex when compared to New World, which could make or break the game, honestly. So again, this is Alpha 2, Wave 2, so things could change down the road, but let's go ahead and take a deeper dive into the next level, which of course is Archetypes. So Archetypes is actually a somewhat new concept for New World because it was added on with the launch of New World Aeternum in mid-October. And it's a little bit of a unique concept when it comes to New World because archetypes realistically have zero impact on your character's development and just overall journey. You essentially select one of 7 archetypes in the beginning of your New World adventure, and you will be able to essentially just select your first 2 starting weapons and also pick up just a quick little trade skill boost in 3 specific trade skills, which is only 50 levels, so it's not even game changing. Again, it's just a small little boost, and realistically, these weapons you're going to be swapping out after 10-15 minutes of playing the game. So again, not a huge impact. However, when we talk about Ashes of Creation, you can not only select a specific race just for overall visuals and impact, but also a specific archetype, which is critically important to your gameplay and your character. There are 8 archetypes you can choose in Ashes of Creation, which are Bard, Cleric, Fighter, Mage, Ranger, Rogue, Summoner, and Tank. What makes things much different than New World is that once you select your archetype in Ashes of Creation, you are locked in on those skills until you stop playing that character. This decision is by far the most important decision you're going to be making in this game because depending on your archetype determines what your primary skills are. Things get even more interesting, and again, this is a unique system implemented in this game, is the fact that at level 25, you can choose a secondary archetype, which then builds your class. So for example, if I choose Fighter when I start my character, at level 25, I can choose a secondary archetype such as let's say a Ranger, and then I would be considered something like a hunter. right? You can use that secondary archetype that you choose to slightly alter your primary skills directed towards a certain direction. The system is very, very complex, and as of today, in the Alpha 2, we do not have the option to choose our secondary archetype soon. That will be coming down the road, and the overall community is extremely excited to test that out. And it's just going to make this overall archetype system very, very complex and also a lot of fun, in my opinion, just because of how unique you can actually create your character. To be more specific, there's a total of 64 different options you can choose when it comes to your class in Ashes of Creation once it actually is officially launched. Now let's talk a little bit about the combat system. One thing I do want to call out straight away is that these two games do have something somewhat similar when it comes to the combat system, and that's primarily the fact that you're allowed to have two weapons equipped when entering combat. Now, when it comes to New World, you have complete flexibility. You can choose any two weapons. You're not locked based on your archetype. You can do just two crazy weapons like a bow and a musket, or a greatsword and a life staff. You can really do anything you want. When it comes to Ashes of Creation, you are limited to a hands-on melee weapon and then a ranged weapon. So you do have to choose specifically one melee and one ranged. But again, there's a lot of options when it comes to overall weapons. So most of the time, players can find something that fits their overall gameplay and just overall fighting style. Now on the left, let's talk a little bit more about New World Aeternum. Based on the weapons that you choose determines what skills you can use in combat. As you can tell on the bottom right there, on the left side of the screen, I have 3 abilities for my Great Axe and 3 abilities for my Warhammer. And those are what I can choose from when it comes to just overall fighting. New World New World Aeternum is not a tab target game. Yes, they did release a bit of a auto locking system in mid-October for the launch of New World Aeternum, but overall, this is far from a tab target game. Honestly, the combat system is one of my favorite things about New World Aeternum because it really is skill based. Just by looking at the positioning of a specific player, you can tell pretty quickly on whether or not they know what they're doing. When it comes to Ashes of Creation, this is a true tab target combat system. So as you can tell on the right side of the screen, I am taking down a handful of mobs with my group, and I am just dishing off a ton of just different skills and abilities. The skills on the bottom portion of the screen you see are just a fraction of the different skills I can use in combat. Again, these skills are based on specifically my class. The weapons I choose provide me unique passives to help buff up my auto attacks and abilities while actually using them. But realistically, when it comes to the overall skills I use in combat, it's more specific to my class rather than my weapon. One thing I do want to call out too is that the overall gameplay and just reliability in group play in Ashes of Creation is quite a bit different when it comes to combat than New World Aeternum. In New World, we like to utilize crowd control effects, such as using a gravity well to set up your team to do a big crash on a specific part of the point, compared to Ashes of Creation, where a mage may be able to cast a certain spell to freeze a target, which allows a certain ability for my fighter to deal more damage to frozen targets. However, as a fighter, I have no option to freeze my targets, so I rely on my group member to freeze the targets in order for me to dish off more damage. So in that aspect, there is a little bit more of reliability in regards to how do I maximize our team's overall damage per second based on the skills and abilities of my fellow group members. Again, both systems and both games, in my opinion, are a lot of fun. It's just a little bit different on the overall approach. One last thing I did want to call out that is somewhat related to the combat system is the overall leveling process in these games. I just want to make it very clear that Ashes of Creation is a much more grindier game than New World Aeternum. To put it in perspective, for New World Aeternum, I was able to completely max out my new character on October 15th in one sitting, right? I probably spent like 13 to 16 hours or so roughly, and I hit from level 1 all the way to the max level 65 in New World just by grinding it out in one day. However, that's impossible in Ashes of Creation. Currently in the Alpha 2, the max level is 25, and in order to do that, it's going to spend at least 50 to 80, possibly 90 hours, depending on whether or not you know what you're doing, to hit level 25. And here's the catch. The max level, once this game is launched, will not even be level 25. It will be level 50. And honestly, down the road, I wouldn't be surprised if that actually increased over time as well. So again, if you enjoy very grindy games, then maybe Ashes of Creation is for you, because it does have a little bit more of a meaningful impact when you do level up your character in Ashes compared to New World. Real quick, if you enjoyed this video, consider hitting that like and subscribe button. It just really helps me out. It just tells me I'm doing a decent job. Also, if you're interested in trying out Ashes of Creation yourself, go ahead and check out the link in the top right corner. It's a link to my referral code that just gives me more in-game currency just to buy some cosmetics. It helps me out, and it just gets you the link to actually purchase the alpha key itself. You have two options. One of them is the alpha key for the second wave of Alpha 2, which is going on right now. And then the next one is a key for the third wave, which starts in May. Again, this is not for everyone. If you are expecting a full game, I do not recommend that you actually buy the alpha, because again, you are signing up for something that is honestly just a complete test, and your character and overall gameplay will be wiped by the time the game officially launches. However, if you're interested in Ashes of Creation, it might be worth it, because you likely will have at least 2 years plus of honestly playing the game before it even gets out, so you do have a head start and understand what you're doing on day one. Okay, enough of that. Let's go ahead and jump back into some comparisons. Now let's talk a little bit about the gathering and crafting systems in both of these games. Overall, when it comes to gathering resources, both of them are very similar. You can see on the screen there's trees, there's things to mine, there's plants to gather. Just like in New World, Ashes of Creation has a system where you can level up your gathering skills just by gathering large quantities of different types of resources. However, when it comes to Ashes of Creation, when you gather these raw resources, there's a chance that they're in common, uncommon, rare, heroic, or even legendary quality. Based on the quality of the gathered item determines the overall processed quality of that item to help enhance the overall crafting. When it comes to New World, when you chop something down, you know exactly what you're going to get, and then there's a small chance of getting some sort of additional item, like a gem, for example, if you mine a orichalcum vein. That is a little bit different based on Ashes of Creation, because realistically, you're potentially getting different quality of the same item rather than different items altogether that you could potentially get in New World Aeternum. The last thing I do want to call out is the fact that gathering resources in both of these games just feels good. As many of us know, in New World, there's a lot of unique noises and sounds that are associated with crafting these materials. That's the same case as it is in Ashes of Creation. Realistically, it's just an overall peaceful activity. You really do kind of enjoy and just interact with your environment in both of these games in order to stockpile a ton of raw resources, which you can then process into items to use when crafting certain items. That takes us to the next part of this video, which kind of compares a little bit more of the crafting systems. One thing I do want to call out is the fact that both of these games do allow you to, once again, process these raw resources into items that you can then use to craft gear, equipment, everything in between. The biggest difference in both of these games when it comes to crafting is that in New World Aeternum, you can craft max gear score items, and then the very next day, you could just get an even better item from a drop from like the 10-man Gorgon raid. In Ashes of Creation, the overall design is making it so that is not possible. They are trying to make sure that crafters are rewarded by stating that the best in slot gear in this game can only be crafted. They are not undermining the efforts and resources gathered and just overall time spent to max out your crafting abilities by allowing you to just get lucky and find something randomly by killing a mob. The end goal, once again, is the fact that crafting gear will be the best option because it leads to the most powerful gear in Ashes of Creation. Next up, let's just talk about overall world maps and just the overall transportation system in both of these games. In New World Aeternum, the overall land of Aeternum has multiple different territories that different companies, other known as guilds, will be able to take control of through different wars. So a war is a 50 versus 50 competition in which a specific company tries to gain control of a certain territory. Once you gain control of the territory, you can actually gain an overall income based on the taxes and just owning the territory in general. There are 3 different factions, and once a specific company in a faction takes control of that territory, it can be indicated by one of the 3 colors as you can see on the map. What's nice about New World Aeternum is that you can quickly just teleport through different teleport shrines, which is the complete opposite situation when it comes to Ashes of Creation. In Ashes of Creation, there is no teleporting. There are certain ember springs that allow you to revive in certain locations, but realistically, they really try to make it a point that if you want to get across the map, it's going to be a legitimate journey to get over there. You cannot quickly just teleport to a certain spot just like that if you wanted to. You're going to have to likely get a specific mount just to travel across the land to meet up with a friend or get to a certain point of interest. One thing I do want to call out too, though, is that there's different nodes in Ashes of Creation, which essentially is kind of like territories in New World. However, each node has a mayor. It's basically a popularity contest. The individual that gets the most votes when there's basically an election, they become the mayor and allows that person to not only take control of the territory, set up certain mission boards, but also unlocks a personal huge flying mount, which is super, super cool. The idea behind this is that only certain people in a specific server will have these large mounts, and it's just kind of adding the overall uniqueness to the game because you can casually be riding a horse or riding a wolf or a bear, and then all of a sudden a player is above you with a massive dragon. I'll kind of showcase this in just a second as well. But again, you can see there's a huge land in both of these games. It's just a little bit different on how you get from one point to the other, and that's based on the overall design of each of these games. Last but certainly not least is PvP. So the PvP system in both of these games are very, very different. When it comes to New World Aeternum, there are multiple PvP modes like Outpost Rush or 3v3 arenas where you can queue up in an instance situation and play against other players with honestly nothing to lose and only things to gain. When it comes to Ashes of Creation, that is not totally the case. There is a minimal of I think they said 10 to 20% of actual instance situations. I mean, even the PvE dungeons are open world, so you can just run into other groups as you're experiencing a dungeon. The whole idea is that there's minimal instance situations, even when it comes to PvP, just to make sure it truly is an open world experience. In New World, in order to really experience open world PvP, you have to either be in the Cutlass Keys PvP zone that automatically flags you, or you just have to manually turn on your PvP flag and cross your fingers that you actually come across someone else that is also flagged. In Ashes of Creation, you can encounter PvP situations at any point. You do not have to be flagged. You can just be cutting down a tree and someone can come up and start attacking you. This essentially is what New World envisioned to begin with, but they slightly changed their direction. So realistically, Ashes of Creation is closer to that always on PvP situation that New World originally thought they were going to do. However, there is a corruption system just to make sure that people just do not constantly kill lower levels for no reason. If I'm flagged for PvP in Ashes of Creation, my name will be indicated in a purple color. If I go up and attack someone that is also in a purple color, then we can battle each other. If I take him down, then I can actually loot the materials in their inventory, which is great. If I attack someone and they are not flagged for PvP and they don't attack back and I end up killing them, I will then be corrupted and my name will be indicated in red. If a player is corrupted, they will have a reduction in their overall stats and also will have a huge penalty if they're killed. That penalty results in a chance of dropping actual gear. So if you have gear equipped and you just go around and kill other players that are trying to be peaceful, you will then be corrupted and could risk losing your high quality gear that you likely could have worked very, very long for. Overall, though, there are a lot of unique PvP modes, just like New World, that is coming to Ashes of Creation, including specific game modes and node wars, which essentially allows all citizens of a specific area to be flagged and in a huge, large-scale open world battle, which honestly looks really, really cool. Again, Ashes of Creation is in Alpha 2, Wave 2 currently. I called this out multiple times in the video because, let's face it, there will be a lot of changes by the time this game does officially launch in a few years. If you do want to be a part of this overall experience and part of the testing and even provide some feedback to the developers, go ahead and take a look at the link in the description below. I have a pinned comment as well that has a link to learn a little bit more about how you can participate in Ashes of Creation. Overall, I'm a huge fan of both these games. I'm excited to see where the future of Ashes of Creation takes us, as well as New World Aeternum, because they do have some unique things coming up down the road, like seasonal worlds, new weapons, and a whole lot more. If you enjoyed this video, consider hitting that like and subscribe button, and I'll catch you guys later. Thanks again for watching.